God the mathematician. Alrighty, here we go. Rabbit hole. I hope, well, this just should be kind of like insightful. And you can take it for what it's worth because I'm not a scientist. Thank the Lord for that. Whew. Let's see how I can sum this up. God the mathematician. God the mathematician, the builder, the fabricator, the creator of us, didn't wave a wand and magically make us appear. He didn't go, whoop, a human. He made us in his likeness. Likeness can be a lot of things. Likeness can be personality. It could be physical. It could be both. It could be mental. Likeness. Let's think about that word for a minute. Our likeness. All right, so the mysteries behind God always fascinates us to the core because we wonder, is he real? I know he's real, but there's a lot of people who always trying to debunk the theory of God. We have a thing called a DNA strand. Now think about that for a minute. A DNA strand is like, it's mathematical equations stacked on top of mathematical equations stacked on top of mathematical equations in a series and in a pattern that to this day, which we probably do in technology, because I need to do a video of hidden technology, but they claim that it would take even one of their supercomputers that we have nowadays weeks or months to decode an actual DNA strand, to break down the mathematical equations all necessary to get all the binary products, the numerical strand. What you see in a DNA comparison is a generalization of numbers put together. So when you see like somebody on Maury Povich trying to figure out who the daddy is, that's pretty simple stuff there, because all you're really doing is just looking for simple traits. And they use that for like, I don't want to get into big words because I'll get them mixed up and probably somebody will debunk my big words, but we'll just say, I'll give you an example here. Let's see. DNA, if you'll ever look at it, it's always in a twisted form and a cylindrical, and it's uniform in its pattern, how it comes out and it turns, and it's got the twists almost like a drill bit. There are spaces in our DNA for a reason. The helicopters are really flying a lot tonight out there. I'm still at shop. It's 8:44. I'm fixing to leave out of here. I'm going to shoot one more video. Of course, I won't load it tonight because I won't be able to because I got to get home. But I'm going to do it now while I'm feeling it. So with our DNA strand and its numerical sequence that's so difficult, even to this day, all our supercomputers have a hard time figuring it out. God did it in a second. He knew the mathematical equation, and just, he figured all that out in pretty much in a timeline that we can't conceive. Timelines are different for different people. I got timelines, rabbit hole for timelines. A fly that lives 2 weeks. When a fly becomes a fly from its larvae, it lives for 2 weeks. And so, can you sit there and tell me for 1 second that fly believes he only lives for 2 weeks? If he knew that, he wouldn't even get off the trash pile. He'd just sit right there. What's the point in even moving? I only live for 2 weeks. To that fly, 2 weeks could be years to him. Our years could be minutes. And another, let's say we'll get outside of let's say minutes, to the extent of where say 100 years to us could be minutes in another timeline, through perspective of actual, try not to get into velocity and distance and all that stuff, but we'll just go as basic as a lawnmower blade, for instance. A pulley turning at 3,000 RPMs is turning at 3,000 RPMs in the very center. And when you go to the bottom of it in the same size pulley, you have 3,000 RPMs. When you take a lawnmower blade and put it on there and go out to the tips of the lawnmower blade, you're still turning 3,000 RPMs. The RPMs have never changed, but through a thing called tip speed, if you were to measure the velocity of what's turning at 300 or 3,000 RPMs here, and then measure the speed way out from it, you have a lever effect that takes place. That lever effect is no different than you putting a pull bar on something that's really long to give you extra leverage to break that bolt loose. So time and timelines can be very similar to that aspect. Science proved that. The Bible doesn't really talk a lot about that because it doesn't want to dilute the fact that God exists, and people have a little bit simpler mind, or don't think that far into things, need to still have something to believe, a handbook to go by. You can't tell them, hey, I was a scientist and I created you out of a mathematical equation and all this stuff about tip speed and timelines, because you would just nobody would pay any attention. You wouldn't get anywhere. So when God wrote, when the Bible was wrote through prophecies and disciples, it was written in a manner to where it could cover all bases in a way that was in an organic form that humans could understand and have something to hold on to. And I'm fine with that. If I'm wrong, God knows that I'm trying my best to figure everything out, and I believe in Him. So, but we're gonna put science and God together for a second here when it comes to our DNA and mathematics, because somebody in the comments had asked me about the breaking down the mathematics and how if you try to change, if God didn't go in the steps that He did, His mathematical equation would become useless. In the timeline it takes for God to do things in a matter of seconds, which is years to us, because of His difference in timeline and from whatever part of where it actually exists. Um, Everybody's accounted for. It even says that in the Bible. Everybody's accounted for. You all have a number, not a social security number, not a driver's license number, but just your DNA sequence is specific to you and you only. You'll have similarities for kinfolk, and over a course of time, you'll find similarities from one human to the next in separate generations, because it can do that. But they won't be the same. There'll always be a difference, a small, minute difference. Everybody has a different DNA strand. God created us in that manner because of the fact that and so whenever He decided to create Earth and humans, things needed to be accounted for, things needed to have a certain registration, and that, if you were to, everything has that. Every living object has DNA. That's its registration to God. That's His serial number. That's His, when it was made, when it, that is it. Science proved that. Science said, here's your DNA, it's a number, it's to you. So the Bible said the same thing, but it couldn't say it all scientific, because you would screw everybody up in 1901, or, well, anyways. So God is our creator, but God was a scientist, and His form we could never conceive. So when they say we're made in His likeness, I'm fine with saying that we look like that. He made us to look like Him. I'm okay with that. I'm fine if somebody says He was made in our likeness to His mindset. Another thing that's kind of neat is we have a thing. We are carbon based. Okay, we're not silicon based. We're carbon based. Check this out. We're carbon based. We are technically a cyborg if you think about it. We are already a pre-existing cyborg, to the fact that, like, we are organic and we're electronic. Our brains emit electrical signals in order for us to actuate our fingers, our mouth, our thoughts. But what we have that a lot of people, a lot of people in human being form have tried to recreate is intelligence. See, our brains are able to create, imagine. You can think about a whole. You don't even need a television. You can sit there and you can look off into the distance, or you can close your eyes and you can picture everything that you want to see in your brain. How amazing is that? What kind of who develops a computer that works that well? Scientists and roboticians or robotics guy, they are so hell-bent on trying to improve the human form. They say that the human brain, they can build computers that will figure out how to make a robot walk in a matter of minutes. It takes human beings months and years, a couple years, to get walking really good. They say that's inferior. They say that they can design something better, but they haven't figured out how to bring any kind of emotion in anything without actually programming it. And if it's somewhat programmed now to the artificial intelligence, it still has to learn. And it's awkward in its situation. It's soulless. And they cannot achieve the actual fabricated human form. So what their next attack is, what these people's attack is to actually design around the human form, reverse engineer the human being. And I could go on as to some of the things that they're doing to try to figure that out. But God's not going to stand for that. It's not going to happen. We are living in some really, really interesting times. This is the part of life where God in the Bible says you don't live in fear. If you think that cowering and running away from anything that's happening that you think is out of your hands, you're just adding to the problem. It's not intentional, so I'm not coming down on people, but you know, I'm kind of getting off subject about God the mathematician. But anyways, everybody has a registration number to God, just like animals do, plants and trees. If you were to cut into them and put them on a microscope, or you would see DNA, tree DNA, cat DNA. Every living being is accounted for. So that's how I figured God is a mathematician. And that's how I figured, being the fact that his timeline is different than ours, he's able to foresee and be able and able to, foresee what's going on. That's how the Bible was wrote. I also think that the fact that this was kind of tried before and it failed a little bit, it failed miserably, and so he redid this and he tried it a little differently. That's a kind of a rabbit hole thought that I've come up with because of the fact the Bible being written in the way that it's written. It's almost like, okay, this is what didn't work, so let's do this. And if you treat people right, and let's say you want to cover all bases so that you treated right in the end, you almost follow the Bible by accident. It's kind of weird. If you read it, you'll actually kind of learn a little bit more, and you'll be a little more comfortable in your movements. But definitely God is our creator, but it goes a lot deeper than that. And our space, our outer space, and our planet, and our stellar structure of stars, radio waves, electrical disbursement, magnetic fields, all only proves what God did, how he did it, and how he's maintaining it. And being the fact that you've got precision events taking place with electrical discharges, magnetic fields, and calculated movements in orbit only proves that he's a mathematician. And everything has a balance. So, praise God in itself. Don't live in fear, and you always stand up for what you think is right. It's kind of how it rolls. So anyway, so that was a little bit of explanation on God being a mathematician. I hope that everybody is okay with that. If you have any thoughts, you're welcome to comment. I'll do my best to get back to you. Please have a good evening. And thank you, everybody, so much. It's been so much fun, and lots of love to all. God is in control.